Hi, Philip. You're at Uluru at the moment.
Good morning, Leah. Yeah, I arrived for a conference about 3 days ago. And so I've been in Uluru attending the Cosmic Consciousness Conference.
So tell us a little bit about the conference.
It's put together by Catherine and Mick, two wonderful human beings. And they put a conference together most years. And yeah, and they invite speakers from all around the world, credible speakers, talk on topics that are energy based, ley lines, mediums, energy healers, channelers, some renowned doctors as well, and sort of specialists in, quantum mechanics or spirituality. And it's been great, had a great conference so far and engaging, you know, the spiritual development in this forum. It's a really exciting place to be doing it.
Yeah, I remember last time we were there together, I met some incredible people.
That's right. We attended 4 years ago, didn't we, together? Yeah.
Did. And there was that big ceremony that we did on the solstice, 20
Yeah.
solstice.
That that actually came up. One of the speakers spoke about how the energy of the earth had changed when we had sat in ceremony, but
Mm.
also how the skies had opened up. If you remember, these
Yeah.
this
Big.
incredible, sort of luminescent pink and blue, and it was an incredible experience.
Yeah, I think we all took very similar photos of like this portal opening up.
Yeah,
Um,
because what had happened was the sun had set, so there wasn't going to be sort of a point of reference in which light would sort of be guided in the sky. And so sitting ceremony then to have the experience of pink and blue.
yeah, I'll
Oh,
add some of those photos so people can get a sense of, what it looked like. It was pretty amazing.
yeah, it's a beautiful experience. But overall, it's been great meeting lots of really exciting people. There's some phenomenal speakers. Uh, and so it's called the Cosmic Consciousness Conference, and it's in Uluru in Northern Territory in Australia. For those of our listeners that might be overseas, and it's usually on every year. It generally coincides with a special event that might be occurring universally.
Mm.
It'll be on again next year.
Perhaps you can give us a little bit of background, on Uluru and some of the energy that you picked up on when you first got there.
So one of the things that you and I have been talking about is my experiences the last 2 years working in regional, in New South Wales in some small towns, and my experience with the Aboriginal communities, and you know, not just sort of the intergenerational trauma that I'm sort of observing as as a clinician, but also some of the incredible spiritual presence and insights that a lot of these individual people have in relation to their own spiritual development. And so Ullaru's just sort of been an extension of that for me. And Aboriginals are the keeper of this land, and there's quite a lot of different type of mythology that talks to how the Aboriginals were, had come from the Pleiades system, and it was understood that they were placed here um, as an Indigenous community to be the caretakers of the earth as sort of a sentient being. And so that's just a very small part of that mythology. But, one of the things that sort of have come up since I've been here is my awareness around, when the Aboriginal communities were placed here 50,000 years ago, probably a little bit longer. And what occurred was that they had arrived here with probably anywhere between, say, 5, 6, 7 strands of DNA that were all active. So, within our spiritual limited understandings, we're born with sort of 2 strands of DNA, and often part of our spiritual development, and it looks different for each of us, but often, the drive is that as we awaken and address more of our multidimensional sort of hologram, that we get more of our DNA activated. And the more we activate, it's really activating parts of our spirit, our soul, and some more of our other cosmic and celestial body. And so what I've noticed is since I've been here, I when I sit in meditation, that I'm noticing that there are some energy beings, almost interdimensional in nature. And it's quite interesting because the energy beings that I haven't seen previously, they stand about maybe 9 foot tall. They're quite lean, sort of they have this translucent presence to them. And I was, very fortunate. They let me sort of telepathically connect briefly. And they were guardians, in the same way that we would see spirit guides or energy beings that sort of watch over our development. They were watching over the development of the Indigenous people. Well, what I was aware of was for the Indigenous Australians. So this was before there was any interruption through colonization. But there is this other set of energy beings, cosmic beings that are not what I've experienced to date. And often the work that you and I do, Leah, where we're trying to become more self-aware of, for example, the Syrian aspect of ourselves, or the Arcturian aspect or the Palladian aspect, and so on. Also extensions of our human form, but they're our sort of celestial body, our avatar body, or an extension of that. And that, to a degree, it's quite tangible. It's just within this holographic system. But these beings that showed up in relation to the Aboriginal spiritual guides, I suppose,
Mm.
uh, yeah, they were interdimensional. That they weren't necessarily within this 12D matrix in the quadrant of the universe that we're in. Yes, I found that really fascinating.
And did you get a sense of, or were they able to communicate to you their origins or where they came from?
They didn't. What I was aware of was, and this is something that about me personally, whenever energy beings present themselves, whether they're interdimensional or from this sort of quadrant of the universe, I tend to observe more than interact. So
Mm.
absolutely, hands down, if you were with me, there would have been a conversation with them. Um, I just wanted to observe and make sense of what is their perspective on sort of moving through this space that they're navigating while we're here as 3D form. And it was almost like they weren't fully aware of our 3D corporeal form. Um, and so what I did notice was that I think I had access to engage them and sort of peer into their world interdimensionally. And I think that they afforded me that access so I could understand and then obviously share with you and our viewers that, like us, the Aboriginals, um, and not just the Aboriginals, but the First Nation people of many parts of this world, that when they've been placed here to provide caretaking for the Earth's consciousness and those that inhabit this Earth, that they're also continually guided. And so they wanted me to have a point of reference, and I think that they gave me some insight. So that was really exciting. It's been an interesting experience.
Mm. And as you just observed them, was it more of a just a sense that they wanted their presence to be known, that that's their role as caretakers or guides of the Aboriginal peoples?
Absolutely. I think also they wanted to remind me that the Indigenous communities, that it's very much a reclamation for them of, the connection to country, that I think that they wanted me to understand um, a level of support that's been afforded to the Indigenous and First Nation countries in this world, and that they don't stand alone, and that now, through their sharing, that people like yourself and I and many others can call them in and look for them to provide additional support to hold space. So I know that a lot of the work that we do is really centered around gaining additional insight around trauma and function of trauma within one's sort of spiritual ascension process. And that often requires us holding space and then providing support and healing. My sense is that they made themselves known as a means of knowing that we can now contact these other beings, and but also trust that they're going to hold space, like it's another level of healing that we as human beings that are aware can draw in and have access to.
And you mentioned that, 50,000 plus years ago came
I want to add,
takers, yeah?
yeah, I just want to add though. So sometimes some spiritual literature reflects we're looking at about 100,000 years.
Mm.
But my sense is that when I'm experiencing my insights, I
Mm.
go as far back as 60 or 70,000. But in terms of when these beings were very strongly present,
Mm.
they took me back to a 50,000 year reference. So again, just so the viewers are aware, our awarenesses and the sharing that we sort of bring into this space is clearly not absolute in terms of an objective truth.
Yeah.
Like most things,
Mm.
uh, within spiritual circles and development, it's really just the insights that we access on a very personal level, and it can be no different from any other people. I just wanted to put that disclaimer in so
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
people understood that we weren't making statements that were sort of absolute.
In saying that, you mentioned that they came in with 6th and 7th DNA strands activated. How are you seeing that play out now with the people that you're working with in the Indigenous communities?
So for our viewers, I do I do counselling, and when I provide counselling, what I've sort of struggled with on a personal level was the level of intergenerational trauma comparable sort of to non-Western communities. Um, you would go back to 11, 12 dimensions, you know. So the trauma is quite significant. So what I was noticing was, why was this trauma continuing to play out? Why does it continue to play out? And it seemed that, so when we're born, historically we would have two strands of DNA until we awoken and remembered and had access to more. In each community, in my observation, I became aware that they were still being born with, four, five, six, seven strands of their DNA activated. But the
Mm.
challenge is that they're being birthed in a human form with all this incredible light and DNA activation, but also 10, 11 generations of generational trauma that is yet to be resolved. And as you and I know, Leah, trauma carries a density to it. So that trauma is quite heavy. It sits in your chakra systems and it needs to be cleared. And so we also are aware that light, if you allow more light into your body through processes of healing and development, that the light will bring up and push up the density, which is trauma, to the surface. And I wonder if what's occurring is, my suspicion is that you have these incredible indigenous individuals being birthed to a human existence. And then there's this sort of contrast that is they're trying to play out where they're birthed, course of their lineage, with having access to greater levels of DNA turned on. And that phenomenal level of light insight is bringing to the surface all the historical trauma. And then so what you then have in play is that struggle from what I've initially shared when we started this conversation, around these interdimensional beings coming through.
Mm.
I truly believe that it's another level of progression. So, there are phenomenal Aboriginal communities throughout Australia that are doing incredible healing, within their own internal communities, their own mobs. So, I think that maybe there's some insight for us to see that there is this level of additional support that they have access to that's quite specific for them.
Mm.
And maybe for me as a counsellor, if I'm providing support, maybe there's a requirement that, I'm aware of that. And
Yeah, I would
getting a
imagine.
little bit noisy here, Leah. I don't know how much more we're going to be able to.
Oh, I can't even hear the noise actually.
Oh, perfect. Excellent.
Yeah, it's all being drowned out by Zoom. It's all good. Yeah, so were there any other energies or beings that came up during the conference while you're there?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
Been incredible. So sitting in the conference room, and this is really interesting for me anyhow, sitting in the conference room, it's almost like everyone has a guardian being that stands beside them. And the guardian beings are often resting their hand, what we would call a hand, generally on their right shoulder. And
Mm.
it feels like, particularly in the conference, whether we're sitting in chairs or whether we're on these round tables, and there were these phenomenal beings just sort of standing. And they were very similar in length, like probably about 9 foot, maybe somewhere 11 feet. And there was clearly mingling, in my view, going on between these other beings.
Oh,
Um,
mm.
but it's a phenomenal place to sort of come and attend these conferences, and many people felt these beings around. And the conference is a great place where they had so many loving and kind people that were doing lots of healing as well. And yeah, and they were providing some support and healing for those that needed it to be able to sort of ground and become more self-aware about their own development as well. But full of beings here, Leah, energy beings, cosmic beings, yeah, even sort of spirit in the way that we know it when we do our mediumship work as well. Yeah, it's a
Mm.
really exciting place.
And do you think it's the frequency of the land where the conference is on, or is it the collective consciousness of it, all these people getting together that allows this to happen? How
Both,
both?
yeah, but yeah, what happens is that when people get together, alchemy takes place. So a lot of our development, I believe, anyhow, is based around the ability to alchemize experiences, and that involves coming together. And I think that this was how it may have been done for thousands of years um, in our human projections, anyhow. Um,
Yeah.
so it's the idea of breaking down the notion of separation, that there's a unity of one, and the unity of one is around creating. And so I think Dolores Cannon said it that we're here to create and work with energy. But she said it in the context, I think, of that we're energy. And so, yeah, and so the more that you have like-minded people around you, well-intended, you'll be able to create and draw in a lot of healing into an individual space. So the land, definitely. And also, yeah, everyone else that's here.
And that reminds me that last time that we were there, I had done one of the tours and they took us around the perimeter of Uluru. That Uluru was never a place where they lived. It was actually a meeting place where all of the different tribes would come together.
I didn't realize that. That's very cool.
But I think it was all of the different nations would come together because it was very central. That's sort of occurring now with the conference. Um, but it's fascinating that you're seeing, the beings, the guides that are coming in with all the people, like they're also coming together and having interactions, also learning and growing through those interactions, I guess. As above, so below.
Absolutely, definitely. And I think that that's what is being observed. And so it almost feels like there's a guardianship process being managed, and
Interesting.
that so that we don't walk alone.
Yeah.
That this conference they're walking with us,
Mm.
uh, and I think that that's a really powerful sentiment at sort of this time in Earth's history. Because I would say that the upcoming next 12, 24 months, where we anticipate there's going to be some disclosure that's going to be more public, that it would make sense for us as a human race to be aware and to observe and experience that we don't walk alone.
Mm.
Um, yeah. And obviously some of these sentiments are reflected in some of the, religious doctrines that, have sort of grown in Earth's history as well. But
Yeah.
through, we're getting it from a celestial and cosmic view, which is really cool.
Well, thanks for keeping us up to date with what's happening in Uluru during the conference.
And we've got to talk about next time we catch up. just to give you an update on it about how our book is progressing. So, maybe the viewers want to be aware of where we're up to with that as well.
Yes, yes, very exciting news around the book, the multidimensional soul. Could you give us a little bit of a background of?
Yeah. And it's really a story, our story around our experience of the multidimensionality of our body, our holographic body. And so, this system that we exist within, the earthly system, planetary bodies that exist on Earth, and sort of the greater cosmos in play, but they're really an extension of this hologram. And the hologram in our 3D form is one projection of that hologram. The hologram itself is our anatomy, and our anatomy has many stations of identity to it. And we often will just only get access to this 3D, very dense projection, which is one aspect of our anatomy. And so the book is really talking about our understanding of what the soul is, our understanding also the soul in terms of how do we awaken, how we've done that, and also the relationship between the notion that there is a cosmic soul and also a multidimensional soul. And we will break down in the book what all those things mean and sort of share them a little bit more in context.
And perhaps the coming videos, we can introduce some of the concepts from the book and have discussions around how they fit into our everyday life, and also the healing we need to do so we can activate our DNA and get more access to our soul, our spirit.
Absolutely, there's quite a lot in the book. I think almost in all chapters, there's a lot of activations
Mm.
around integrating get access to what we're talking about in regards to the cosmic and the multidimensional soul. And I think it'd
Yeah,
be a
yeah,
good
that's
read.
what I love about it. The practical and experiential parts. So they aren't these just abstract concepts. We get the readers to actually have a chance to experience what we're discussing in the book.
Yep.
Well, thank you for
Thank
that.
you, Leon. We're catching up and we'll catch up again.
We will.